Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hollywood Matt Connolly. Welcome to the AWE podcast with the double biceps. There it is in play. There it is. It's a legal requirement every single time we appear on camera. Has to be done, and it has been done. The lawyers are satisfied. They've checked the box. The esteemed gentleman sitting to my left, but you're right. It is, in fact, the co-pilot, co-founder, co-breather of air, co-wearer of clothes in this very room. It is, in fact, the king of sting, the master of disaster, the count of Monte Cristo, Thunderlips, the ultimate male. It is the winner of the Dave Stockbridge of the Year award. He's put his nomination in already for this year. It's finally a 3-horse race, I think, between you and a couple of others. Yeah. It is decided by your mother. So, well, you say you might have some home court advantage there, but Maybe. It is Dave Stockbridge. Welcome to your own show.
Well, thank you very much for this very, very warm introduction. As always, Hollywood Matt Connolly, and of course, we've got ourselves a very, very special guest.
I'm excited about this.
Todd Hutchings is, if we had to go through all the former titles, we'd be here for another 2 hours. But for those that are fans of arm wrestling, they, of course, know the man on screen. So, Todd Hutchings, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Well, mate, it's an absolute joy to have you part of the AWE card. I know we tried this a little while ago, and there was an incident. There was speculation a snowmobile was involved. Maybe I made the snowmobile bit up, but there was some speculation there. So what happened that stopped you from jumping on the plane last time?
It was, I think I was supposed to get on a plane Wednesday morning, like 6 a.m. and the airport's like 2 hours from here. So Tuesday evening, I'm running around trying to take care of all the stuff you got to do before you leave for a week. Mm-hmm. And part of it was I had to run a bunch of corn down to a feeder, and I was on an ATV, and I wasn't going very fast. But as I was coming back, and I'm still wearing the clothes I'm going to get on the train with. So I got like my church shoes on, nice pants, a nice shirt. And that ATV flipped over, and I got my boot got caught in the pedal of it. The handles came over and like smashed me in the left hand, and then hit me in between the belly button and the fun parts. And then we slid down this hill, and now the ATV in the throttle, the throttle on ATV is a thumb. It got like pushed on full blast, so this thing's just angry. It's leaking gas all over, and I'm still sliding down this hill. You know?
Oh, God. And this is worse than the snowmobile we created.
This isn't an ATV accident. It's an environmental disaster at this point.
Yeah. And I got it right, but I couldn't get it back to the trail. So ran to the store, bought like a rope and a come along, and bought some snatch. And I was able to winch it part of the way onto the trail. I still couldn't get it all the way up to where it was. So I was going to do that in the morning. And
I'm imagining you're just using side pressure, dragging it up the hill.
And my hands started swelling, my belly started, but I still thought I was getting on the plane at this time. So went to bed at like 10 o'clock, went to bed at like 9 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, I told my girlfriend, I said, look, I think I got to go to the hospital, man. There's like some stuff inside me, not right. We were at the hospital, and they kept me for 2 nights. You know, I still thought even though I stayed the first night in the hospital, I still thought in the morning, I go, you know what? If we get out of here at 4 o'clock in the morning, we can still make that airplane. And by this time, my hands swelled up like I'm allergic to bee stings. The doc said, "You're not getting out of this bed." You know,
this is fine. I'm only going up against Ryan Bowen. It should be fine.
They were talking about amputating my left hand.
What?
You know?
Wow!
I said, I go, don't do that. I'm kind of partial to it. I mean, you know, just don't.
Should I still arm wrestle?
Because what happens is, it's called compartment system, but if you're bleeding internally like on your leg or your chest or even your arm, your body can swell up and that blood can pool up. It doesn't really cause a problem. That's what was happening. It turns black and it's ugly and it's nasty. But in your hand, as that bleeding goes and it can't drain out through your wrist, so it starts squeezing everything in your hand. And pretty soon, you'll lose circulation. So now the tendons are being starved. They're being starved. You know, I couldn't move my hand. You go numb, and it's basically, it would be like just cutting the circulation off to your hand. So
like
they said you might lose that hand. We might have to like go in there and like cut holes in it and drain that stuff out. I mean, and I'm saying, well, it happened. Let's not talk about it. Let's just get going because, you know, doctor, I still got a plane to catch.
Wow. That's so much worse than we heard. We didn't hear any of that side of it.
It was.
I almost feel bad about joking about it now. This was a serious medical incident.
Yeah. So no, I was there for 3 days. They put all kinds of drugs on me. They just watched it. Several specialists came in. As the swelling started going, of course, I had to ice it and I had to hold it up and keep working it. So I'm thinking, oh, I know this from dealing with arm pumps. So it's the same thing. It's all about getting that fluid out of your arm. The coolest thing, though, was like the last day when I finally got discharged. And since I was in the hospital, you know, and I didn't cancel my first flights to Australia have gotten crazy expensive. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
The last time I went to Australia, my ticket was like $1,100. These tickets were $2,200. The tickets today are even more than that. But and of course I didn't cancel. So the airline says, well, you just lost that. Those are non-refundable tickets, you know, but we worked something out. But anyways, so the last day when I finally got discharged, my nurse was, she was Asian. I think she was Vietnamese, but I don't know. She could have been Korean. I can't tell the difference. And it seems rude to ask. All I know is she's like, I got trophies where the person on the trophy is bigger than what my nurse was, you know. And she's pushing me on the wheelchair. And she says, you have an incredibly high tolerance for pain. She says, I've never seen anybody in the hospital hurt like you that never asked for pain meds. Wow. And I go, could you say that to my phone so I have a recording?
Say it again, just how you just said it then. I'm just going live.
I do have a witness to saying it, though, but yeah.
And of course, on that occasion, you were going to be our main event against Ryan Blue Bowen, and on this occasion, you're up against the beast Mataringi Heta Morris for the
Mataringi.
Okay.
I've been trying to pronounce it correctly, and I cannot read that and say it correctly. So I will never say Mataringi.
None of us can.
The way I
we don't know if we're saying it right. We just say it fast.
We say it very quickly and hope that he's not listening.
That's what he's being called from now on.
It's always good to default to the beast if in doubt. So obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. Is there different preparation? Does your preparation change depending on your opponent, or do you just have that same prep regardless?
Well, no, I mean, it's the prep's different for him because he's a taller and he's a top roller. But to be fair, it was different. It was going to be different anyways, because the only reason why I was supposed to pull Ryan Bowen was the real guy canceled, and then plan B canceled, and then plan C and plan C's uncle. And I think Ryan just says, you know what, if Todd's free, he will come, you know. So I think Ryan just was like, I think I was just at the end of Ryan Bowen's like Rolodex, you know.
You were under the list of, I don't know if he would actually accept it. Like, let's just try anyway. Yeah. He said, yes, we can.
I think I was in Montana pulling an event, or I was either in Montana pulling or on my way to Montana when he called. So it was like real short notice. But I mean, me and Ryan go way back. I would have helped him out anyway. And actually, after I accepted it, I go, you know what? Here's a more famous person you should pull. This guy will really make you some money. I assumed Ryan called him and was just going to like renege on me, and the guy declined. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but
Well, we didn't hear any
so
more
that's how
about
I
it,
got
so
that
I
match.
assume he stopped
You
at
know.
you. So,
So, well, in the world of arm wrestling, I mean, you are a superstar and you've been at the top, the elite for well over a decade. And it's amazing for us to have you on the show. It's a real privilege.
It certainly
This is
is.
like really exciting. This is 7 a.m. in the morning for us. So it was like I've literally just come straight from working all night.
Matt hasn't slept since Tuesday.
And all night I'm like, oh, I get to talk to Todd in the morning. It's going to be fun.
Well, we're about the same because I'm at the end of my work day too. So we're at the same spot in our work schedules. Because after this, I'm going to bed. You know?
And what do you do normally for work?
I'm an engineer.
Okay. Yep. And it's
snowmobiles mainly.
Snowmobile repairs.
I typically design or manufacture, or I'm currently doing quality work, so ensuring the design and the manufacturing is copacetic. But basically, I build machines for a living. So,
and how flexible has your work been with respect to your arm wrestling career?
It actually works out well. I get adequate time off, and I can go on short notice. Mm-hmm. And most events are on weekends anyway, so I don't really consume a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested.
And there's some flex time in it. You know, if I work over, I get a little extra time off. So
yeah. So reasonably.
No, it's worked out. It ain't the sweet deal John's got, but it's pretty cool.
It's for some people, you know, the challenges of balancing a job and the potential of their arm wrestling career is really difficult and a hard thing for a lot of people to address. They almost feel like they've got to go all in the arm wrestling, or they're not going to reach their full potential. From your perspective,
that's exactly true for everybody.
Yeah. And from your perspective, I guess operating at that highest level of the sport for such a long time now, you've really seen the sport transform over the last 4 or 5 years from being just that, you know, at the backyard in the pubs and just people basically mucking around to and quite a collegial tight community to this rapid expansion in popularity in the sport as it and new promotions are emerging. Do you see a point where somebody of your caliber would be able to step back from full-time work and just dedicate themselves to arm wrestling in the next few years?
Yes. I don't think, I mean, I certainly won't be able to, but the expansion and transformation of the sport start just over the last 20 years. You know, it's progressively getting bigger, and it's getting bigger faster. So at this trajectory, probably within 10 years, it'll look completely different. Now, you won't have any 40-year-olds at a competitive level probably in 10 years. I mean, it's because I started in 2000, and it was a tournament that gave away $100 was rare. And if you held one, there'd be 40 people in that class, to where there's a lot of people making, I mean, probably 20% of my taxable income is arm wrestling, you know, which is way more than, you know, it's not as much as the super pros, you know, Devin and John and, you know, Jerry Caderet and those guys, but it's way more than anything I ever imagined when I started. Yeah. And the proliferation of leagues and stuff like AWE, like East First West, like King of the Table, and it can just keep expanding. No, I think this will be like a legit, you know, I don't think it'll ever be like a high school collegiate type sport. Not in my country, just because we have so many anyways. Yeah. But I think it'll be more like World's Strongest Man type stuff. I think people will be able to make like not just a living, but like maybe not like a Pearl Jam, Linkin Park rockstar living, but like somebody who travels around like within 800 miles type living, you know, like I got a few albums out and I got like fans and stuff. So, you know, I think definitely make, you know, a pretty good living at it, you know.
Well, it was an interesting observation there. You were saying that you feel like in 10 years' time there won't be as many guys in their 40s and 50s that are occupying that elite level. What do you feel that might be? Is it just because those young guys are getting stronger so much more quickly and accruing that technical knowledge because of the amount of competition that's now around them,
I
or just
probably
really good
shouldn't
guidance from
have
the
said
last
40.
generation?
I'm going to back away from 40, but I'm going to say like 50, only because I think arm wrestling is very close to like World's Strongest Man or weightlifting as far as absolute full, like the load you put on your body.
Yeah,
And a 40-year-old power lifter or a 40-year-old Olympic weightlifter isn't old because they've had a lot of time to put muscle and bone into that structure.
yeah,
But a 50-year-old World's Strongest Man or a 50-year-old Olympic lifter or a 50-year-old power lifter, that's a little more, So I think in your 40s, I think you'll still be plenty strong enough, but there's also these just wicked fast reactionary type, kinetic type arm wrestlers.
yeah.
And I don't see a lot of those super fast guys in their, once you got 40 candles on your birthday cake, people stop talking about how fast you are. They talk about your endurance. They talk about your YouTube clicks, they talk about a lot of things, but they never mention about, wow, that guy's fast for all those birthday candles.
Yeah, it is exciting to see this next generation of arm wrestling, the people that are finding the sport. And most of the people that we sort of come across that come to our arm wrestling clubs or to our events, they've found the sport through YouTube, through Devin Lorette, John Brezink. They've been watching those things, the old WoW sort of events. With yourself, you were on there as well, and it's fun to see that you've got these guys that between 18 and 30 that they've discovered the sport, and then it's like, okay, out of this group of people that are finding it, there is a few hidden gems here and there that can be the next superstars, and we might have found one with the
Bowman.
Rykard Bowman, who's been training with Ryan Bowen, and he will be on the AWE card as well. 19 years old, and already like making it very difficult for Ryan in the training room, and he's taking on Mario Marcus, who's one of the top 10 in Australia for his first match.
and I guess there's a classic case of a young man who had a discipline. Rugby was his sport, and he came to Australia to hopefully play professionally, and has now found his way into arm wrestling, and now sees a pathway to become a professional arm wrestler one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was never really an option, even maybe 5 years ago. But now it's like, we're seeing these organizations coming up like ourselves with the AWE, Arm Gods, and obviously East versus West, and you've got King of the Table and Monster Factory, and all these places that are putting on events, and they're of that caliber that you can start to rise and make this a thing. Like it's a real thing.
Yeah.
And it's getting less and less of the people that when I say, I do arm wrestling or I run an arm wrestling club, less and less of people that say, "Oh,
is that a thing?
Is that a real thing? Is that a sport?"
Yeah, there's definitely awareness now, and now you're looking over your shoulder. There seems to be like a lot of younger guys entering the sport, and then there's this top echelon of elite athletes that are kind of getting in their 40s and their 50s. Who do you see in the middle ground there as some of the emerging superstars that might I guess take up some of the vacuum that's left as some of the big names of the sport naturally retire and decide to call it a day?
I think in my country, I think Corey West for sure. We follow super heavyweights here, so most of our famous people are going to be super heavyweights.
200 kilos of Corey West to follow.
Yeah, he just qualifies for super heavyweight. Just scraped in.
Only just.
Yeah. It's weird because people will come in and like in my country, you got to stay in it for a while. Because it takes a while to get recognized before you start traveling. Let me think. Paul Lynn for sure. If we're looking at a middleweight guy, he's got a lot of time and potential in front of him. I've never met him, but we got a guy, and I'm going to probably pronounce his name wrong. His name's Adam Worozinski. He's out of South Carolina. I don't know him too well. He's been at East First West a few times, never when I'm there. I'm only saying he's got potential because he's starting out in the same club I started in. All right. Because I started in the South Carolina club. So if they do to him what they did to me, plus he's got the benefit of everybody else, he should be a superstar, you know?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. But I just want to talk about your style for a second, because you have a very unique, sort of a very specific characteristic with the way that you pull, and it seems to be that the side pressure king is the Toddzilla, and it's almost like you could say, I don't care what happens with my hand and wrist, I'm going to the pin pad no matter what. And you see so many matches where you've just completely just gone straight sideways and just driven to the pad for a victory, which is almost the first thing you told people not to do.
So was that just a natural disposition to move in that shape, or was that something that you kind of landed upon because you knew that was going to be difficult for opponents to deal with?
In my case, it was something I purposely, because I started at 35. So I'm thinking I had 5 years in, and the last thing I could do was take advice from all these people who had been arm wrestling for 20 years. Because if I did what they did, I wouldn't be as good as them for another 20 years, and I had 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I was kind of consciously thinking, well, you got to go sideways to win. You can have all kinds of hand position and power and everything else, but you never pin anybody unless you go sideways. I was fortunate enough to land in a high-level powerlifting gym with a very renowned powerlifter that owned it, that was currently competing, you know. And you'd walk around his gym and you'd see his world records posted, you know, and by date, and that kept getting higher. And that was the first time that it clicked to me that there are people out there that actually measure how strong they are and they time when they hit new peaks. So at the time, most arm wrestlers were doing lots of table time where you can't really control the volume of the intensity, or all their weight training was all volume based. It was all based on hundreds of reps or 10 minutes of pulling. Whereas the power lifters are saying maximum effort one time. Now you know how strong you are and just keep getting stronger. Your other comment is it's not that rare. It's becoming more and more popular now that the world is no longer infatuated with that goofy King's Moose stuff. And it's about time we moved on from that. So Gabby will blast full on sideways without her hand. You'll see some match with Artem Taranenko doing the same thing. And when John was making his comeback, you saw his hand kind of compromised in the Paul Lynn match and the Chant Shaw match, you know. And a younger John never lost his hand. Okay. But when John was on his comeback, you know, he was probably still reminiscing about his couch, but he lost his hand, and you're seeing him pull Paul Lynn over. And that was the scariest thing I ever saw. I go, oh shit. If John's doing that, nobody can beat him. You know?
Absolutely.
You know, because it used to be John would win all the time and he would lose trying to win. As soon as John goes to, all right, well, if I can't win, I'm just going to not lose. Now you can't beat him, right? Because he's either going to win or not lose. And I go, oh man, that's unbeatable, that combination.
and is it at all a surprise to you now that we're seeing that I guess that generation of athletes that you've kind of come up with, that, and in John's case, you know, nearing 60 and still competing at that high level? And does that kind of adjust your own expectations about the longevity of your career?
It did, but I started giving it when I first started realizing that power lifters and strongmen were competing into their 40s. I kind of adapted it to then, but I always only ever had a long-term plans, but short-term expectations. So I was always only looking like a year or two out. And if it worked out, I'd go another year. I mean, I quit 2 or 3 times, you know, it's not like, I mean, had I had the foresight in 2000 and said, wow, you might be doing this for 25 years, I would have completely changed the first 5 to 10 years of what I did. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have started traveling so soon. I wouldn't, I would have had an actual progression, laid out. I would have had a long-term thing, but
And you arm wrestling.
You don't know what you don't know, and you just play the cards you got.
Do you perceive maybe a time, because a lot of these big names are, of course, got such a huge following now, thanks to social media and YouTube, that there might just be, like there is in bodybuilding or powerlifting, a masters category that emerges, so everybody can see their favorite arm wrestlers still being competitive, but maybe just not at the elite level anymore.
Only if it pays money. I've never made any. I am a professional arm wrestler. Okay, I am not seeking fame or glory. So they've had masters categories and all that stuff ever since I've been in it. I've only been pulling money tournaments and money events for a long time. If you're trying to be famous, or if you're trying to win some certain victory, it takes a whole lot of mental gymnastics, to keep yourself in the game and motivated. But if you start out trying to be excellent, and then you have a business model where you are doing it professional, you can pursue excellence and you can pursue lucrative deals. It just simplifies everything, right? It takes a lot of ego out of it. It takes the worries in the fight about weight classes, whether or not the ref screwed you, whether or not they're going to change the tables every single year the WAL holds an event, whether or not they're going to do stuff like that. It just makes arm wrestling fun and acceptable, and it just makes it a lot easier there's enough complexity and problems to solve in the sport the way it is. You don't have to heap a bunch of ego and self-esteem problems into it, so just do yourself a favor and enjoy it. Figure out a path forward where you're going to enjoy it, and then you can do it for decades. You know what I mean?
When you were coming up in the sport, did you have anybody that you looked at and said, that's somebody I want to emulate, or that's an idol for me in I want to do what they're doing and sort of follow their path?
I was a couple of years into it before I realized John Brzezinski was a real person. Okay. I had heard about this guy, and I didn't believe that there was a 215-pound man who was the greatest in the world. I just thought people were just liars, And I'm from the state where Ted Nugent is, and he's probably the closest thing to a superhero that the earth has ever seen. And I didn't believe John Brzezinski was real. Other than that, as far as a career, Cobra Rhodes also lived around the area that I did, and I'd heard rumors and stories about him. Didn't quite believe them either, But meeting John was transformative, because there was a no-nonsense guy who had his shit together. You know what I'm saying? The guy has like zero ego problems. He knows where he's at. It doesn't bother him when he loses. He doesn't. And I've always just been truly, truly amazed at the way John conducted himself, the way Ron Bath conducted himself. But as far as following their careers, I always had to shortcut it, because the best people in the sport always had, decades of experience and a year or two into it. So I always had to I couldn't cut corners, but I had to find a different path that worked for me.
Do you remember the first time that you met John or got on the table with him?
The first time I met him was at a Harley pull, and my youngest kid was maybe this tall, and I got pictures of John holding him, Dave Patton holding him, Cobra Rhodes holding him. Travis Bajent beat Eric Waffel left-handed. John won the Harley Davidson. My first two matches were Cobra Rhodes and Kenny Smith, wow. Right? I had cut from 190 pounds down to 176 because I figured that would increase my chances of winning the Harley pull my first year out. I was out in two, I took the whole
oh, no.
I mean, it was such and You know, you're constantly, when you're starting out, you're constantly seeing levels to the sport. You see your practice people, then you go to a real tournament and you get smacked around, then you go to then when you meet like world elite people, you go, at first you go, there's no way I can achieve that. But then when you think about it, you go, holy smokes, man. There are whole entire like universes out there that I didn't even know existed, you know?
Absolutely.
So it's an eye opener, and that part of it's the most fun full-fledged depression can ever be when everybody's ass, you know, and you're just getting motivated to keep doing it.
That should be the tagline for arm wrestling as a sport: the most fun that depression can be.
I also like the one that it only hurts for the first 10 years.
Yeah. and now with your conditioning, so let's say you're coming over your arm wrestling, Madringi Heston Morris, 100, he's up to 170 kilos, so he's going 5 kilos since AWE one.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've seen bigger.
Yep. So
in Corey West.
Corey West. There's how long does it take for you to be able to recover and get back to normal training after you've had a serious pull and a super match at that level?
A lot longer now. It used to be measured in days. Now it's a week or so. But some of that might just be that people are better now. You know, because when I was recovering in days, the whole sport was at a lower level. You know, so yes, I'm older, but yes, the sport's a lot harder. You know, so there's a balance between those two. I mean, the arm wrestlers today, the top people today are way better than the top people were when I started. You know, well, not the individuals. And I'm not saying like Levon is that much better than the Prime Simplinkov or the Prime Kushkar or the Prime Vovoda, but the depth of every class is certainly higher than it's ever been. You know, the peak people might be about the same over the last 20 years, but where you used to have one person and then everybody else was like this far below them, now you have this person and you have a bunch of people like close to them.
Yeah.
So like there's just a lot better talent out there now than what there used to be. And that might be part of the recovery times going, you know, you recover a lot more from a 300-pound bench than you do from a 600-pound bench. Well, a 300-pound bench used to be respectable, you know, and now people laugh at your 500-pound bench. Not that I've ever benched 400 myself, you know, so I assume a 500-pound bench would be respectable. I wouldn't know. I've never been 400. So,
and going back even like 10 years, it was pretty rare to see somebody over, 150 kilos. That was, a muscular 150 kilos, for instance. And now you're starting to see some of these top echelon of athletes kind of floating around that type of figure.
Yeah. 150 kilos is like 330 pounds. I remember the first tournament where I saw a 400-pound arm wrestler.
Wow.
And I was there with Bob Brown, and it was Sean Latimer standing there talking to 3 or 4 people. And I go, Bob, there's 3 or 4 people there that are over 400 pounds. He goes, oh yeah, easily. All 3 of those guys are over 400 pounds.
Wow.
And I'd never seen a 300-pounder. 300 pounds used to be rare. Now there's several 400-pound people in one tournament.
They're morphing into gorillas. Yeah.
Well, it's excited me that they're choosing arm wrestling as their sport. You know, if they've got the opportunity, if they've got that physicality, you would think they're probably going for American football, or they're probably going, if they're tall, maybe they're looking at the basketball side of things. But they're like, no, arm wrestling's for me. That's where my thing is. And then it's like, oh, awesome! It's so cool that these guys, they have the other options, but they've chosen arm wrestling because they love it.
Yeah, that's right. And you're getting those crossover personalities like Larry Wheels, for instance, who've got a huge following online. They're great at any number of disciplines, but very fortunately for the sport of arm wrestling, they've also chosen to pursue the sport and bring loads of attention to it as a result.
Yeah. The sports, like I said, it's growing, it's getting bigger, and it's getting bigger faster. So we're nowhere near plateauing out.
Absolutely. What Ryan was telling us about your sort of warm-up routine, which I thought was quite interesting, before a match, that you would do a couple of almost 90% effort, 1 rep max kind of things, like,
Oh yeah.
and then you would treat the match as your like official 1 RM.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, I myself, it takes me about an hour to warm up, and I can't, and I can't hit 90 plus 95% without a 60, a 70, an 80, and a 90 warm up. I can't do like 30 reps at 40% and then go out and hit a 90. I mean, I know that myself. So yeah, about 45 minutes. About 45 minutes out from a match, I'm pulling about as hard as I possibly can. Not against a person, but against bands and stuff. I'm definitely, because your brain's got to find all those neurons and all those connections to fire all that stuff, So I want to make sure my brain's got plenty of time to pull out the GPS and the map and make sure it plugs all the wires into all the right the holes. You know what I mean?
So you're lighting up the neuro pathways, so you're in preparation for that moment.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, it's and that's quite counterintuitive. Is that something that you picked up from the powerlifters? Because you'll see that in powerlifting competitions where people will edge closer and closer to a PB or to their record, and then they'll 1 rep, and then that'll be that. But it sounds like a very similar progression in a way of preparing to what a powerlifter would do.
It works for me because a lot of times, and this happens so often you can count on it. A lot of times I will fail at a PR 2 or 3 times. Well, not 3 times. I'll fail at a PR 1 or 2 times, and then with 20 or 20 plus minutes rest, hit it, and then hit another one higher than that. So I know myself, training to failure and then resting fires me up to go another notch higher. And I saw one of the world's strongest men competitions where Eddie Hall was like commentating, and they were like going after deadlifting or something. And Eddie Hall laid it out. He goes, I think someone's going to deadlift, pick a number, 1,200 pounds. But first you're going to see, 1,100, 1,150, then 1,200, So I go, oh, yeah, that's kind of what I do, because so those guys are in the back room, lifting heavy weights. They only lift their, the ones for show are out in front, but they're working just as hard in back where the audience can't see them. So that's the stuff I follow. I see a lot of famous people sitting in the audience, joking around, not doing shit before their match. They just walk up and hit you hard. So I mean, it's we're not all on the same bus here, okay?
But you've been you've iterated your methodology into courses. So if people are interested, they can kind of pick up on some of these methods and techniques and refine them under your tutelage and see whether or not they do work for you. Because it seems to me like there's a way, and then there's very much your way, which is off to the very much left field, and so for people seeking that extra bit of performance that they might not be getting through doing things the regular way, you've got an option there that could very much help them reach their potential.
Yeah, I'm very honest how I train. I put it out there. I've been very consistent as I've been doing it for about 23 years. I've been doing this West Side barbell stuff for about 20. And I've tweaked the tactics a little bit, but the strategy's been pretty much the same for about 20 years. And it's documented, it's out there. And if you asked me a question 15, 20 years ago, and you ask me today, if it's training related, for the most part, it's going to be the same. It'll be changed a little bit because we now know more about rehab. We know a little bit more about what exercises translate more to, pronating or cupping and stuff. Actually, cupping, rising, those terms weren't even invented when I got started. You got a lot more equipment. We got a lot more specialized equipment to train with. So a lot of the tactics have changed a little bit, but the basic strategy. If you're getting stronger, add volume. If you're not getting stronger, change your routine and add volume. So that's pretty much the recipe.
And do you have any favorite little toys or grips or handles or little novelty items that you've bought on Instagram? I'm a bit guilty of that myself. The little box arrives and my wife wonders what it is, and it's like it's a Gripzilla or something like that. Or what are you doing with another one of these handles? They're just like the other ones you don't use. Like, yeah, but that one might make me stronger. But do you have any of those little novelty items that captured your imagination?
The only store-bought handles I have were given to me. Almost all my equipment's homemade, so I got homemade multi-spinners, homemade wrist wrenches. I think the wrist wrench, probably more than anything else, elevated arm wrestling. I think the JM presses doesn't get enough credit, but those people who are doing JM presses are lifting a lot more and they're training harder, because it rehabs that elbow quicker.
Yeah.
But all athletes will tell you
okay.
this. You come back to fundamentals every once in a while. I'm focusing a lot on reverse curls with a straight barbell. So there's nothing. I mean, you can do that at Planet Fitness, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also the JM presses. I reckon they're fantastic for elbow, even for people that are new to the sport that are really suffering as they're getting those joints conditioned. The JM presses almost provides instantaneous relief, and just 15, 20 minutes after the day after, if you've done JM presses, I've found that I can get around, and that was something I learned from watching one of your training videos that popped up on YouTube, and it has made a world of difference to my ability to be able to get back on the table sooner.
It gives you a lot of confidence in your elbow too. When you're in a funny match and you're hung out and a little unorthodox, you go, "Hey, that elbow doesn't feel compromised at all."
which is helpful if you're just going to go sideways from there.
That's right. So there's courses that you're selling, or people can get in touch with you for personal?
No, all my stuff's free. It's on YouTube.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, giving back.
Right. The first advice Ryan Bowen gave me on videos was give away your best stuff.
All right.
So I just give away everything.
Many took it
all.
Give it all to me.
Just send it to me first, and I'll review it. And
although there is something I'm doing in practice now, and I'm not telling anybody about it yet because I want to do it for a year or so to make sure it works. Because I didn't really start hyping JM presses till I did them about 9 to 10 months to make sure they were right. Because I don't want to go out there and say something, and then 5 years later I make a video and I go, "Oh yeah, that's all rubbish. Don't do that." So I want to do it for a while, but there's a practice technique that I might reveal next year that you guys are going to go, "That's so obvious. Why didn't I invent that?"
Or maybe you can tell us off air and we can get a head start on everybody else.
We won't record it or release it.
We are the weakest men in arm wrestling, so we're happy for any help that you might be able to provide. So we're big card AWE 2. It's at the Adelaide Oval. So 1st of July if you're in the US and you're tuning into the pay-per-view. 2nd of July if you happen to be on this side of the world and buying tickets and want to be there in person. It's going to be held in a ISCA certified cage, which as far as I'm aware, with the only arm wrestling promotion in the world holding their event within an ISCA certified cage. And I don't know if that makes any difference to the arm wrestling action whatsoever, but it does look pretty cool.
Yeah, it's got a moat with crocodiles.
We're working on the moat.
And flames and barbed wire, electrified barbed wire.
Yeah, that's all coming. The pyrotechnics team are working on all of that right now. But AWE 3 maybe. It actually sounds like something might happen to Arm Gods though. But you're up against Mataringi Hes-Morris for the Intercontinental belt. You were mentioning before your preparation as you're coming into this event does vary a little depending on who your opponent is, and how's all the preparation been going in the lead up to the event so far?
It's good. I feel good where I'm at. I still got another 3 weeks or so. So 3 or 4 weeks. I got to check the calendar, but no, it's plenty of time to get back into the groove and adjust just before I get there.
And do you rest for a week or two before you lean
It
into
takes me
competition?
40 hours to get to Australia, so I'll train up until the day before I go on the airplane because just traveling forces me sedentary. And then when I get to an event, I pretty much spend the whole time in the hotel room prior to the competition, so I get plenty of rest. Just going, just training as hard as I can, and then just going cold turkey because I usually end up with 2 or 3 days before the match anyways. And I can't imagine you need more than that. So,
yeah, it's funny. It's crazy for the time difference and everything. And when I was booking the flights to get the guys over here with Jordan Sill and Artem Taranenko, obviously from Florida, and Jacksonville. Anyway, but trying to figure out which day they needed to leave so that they would get here in time. And it was like, okay, if they leave Wednesday, they get here Friday, but it's not Friday, it's Thursday. Because
you got to rely on Expedia to lay all that out for you because it tells you based on when you land. But it is confusing, and you're scared to death to get it wrong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like, oh, you've actually missed the event while you're in the
air. Now, one of the really cool things about this AWE event is that the fans that do happen to buy tickets and come along, one, they'll be seated in the VIP section right beside the cage. So they'll be nice and close to the action and the athletes. But straight afterwards, we've got after pool, which is down the back of the room, overlooking the playing surface of the Adelaide Oval. And if you are one of those very fortunate VIP ticket holders, then you'll be able to come out the back with us and share the tables with some of the best arm wrestlers in the world, and certainly within the region, and some of our AWE emerging superstars as well. So we would encourage anybody, as soon as those tickets go on sale next week, grab yourself one of those and make sure that you're cage side, but more importantly, that you get the opportunity to shake this man's hand in person, because opportunities to have Todd Hutchings in Australia are few and far between, and so it could be a long time before we see you back here.
Yeah, the amount of people that are like so excited that you're coming along. I can't believe Todd Hutchings is going to come. When's he going to? Do you think I could get on the table with him afterwards? I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully. But yeah, there's very much excitement and hype, and yeah, we're very, very happy to have you here.
As a matter of fact, I've got a feeling that it's your shirt that's located right behind us right now. So I'm just
is it the Hutchings one?
I've got a feeling it is.
On the one that's hanging on the wall.
I've got a feeling.
Oh, yes. It's going to be funny if it isn't.
This was meant to be your last shirt, so we do have a new shirt. You won't get the dusty one on the wall.
I hope that it's not yours.
There we go.
Oh, it is.
Oh, very nice.
Very lucky to put the Ryan Bowles shirt after all of that. But there you go, mate. It's all waiting for you here.
Yeah, no, but the belt, the Intercontinental belt, it's going to be. I mean, that thing's amazing. We do new belts for every event, so the current belt holder will be able to keep their belt forever. So it doesn't. The title is the one that changes hands if it does happen to change hands, and it's going to be July the 2nd here at Adelaide Oval, and the main event will be this esteemed gentleman on the screen here, Todd Hutchings, one of the greatest arm wrestlers in the world, and an absolute privilege to have you here talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Todd. And we'll look forward to seeing you over here in Adelaide. Thank you so much for sparing your time and jumping onto the podcast and spreading the word about AWE too. And we absolutely can't wait to see you here in Australia, mate. And safe travels on this occasion. Maybe stay off the snowmobile. And it's not snowing over there at the moment, is it? No, we're okay. I think it was because your hype video for your match with Ryan, you were walking in the snow. And then I heard there was an ATV accident. I just assumed a snowmobile.
Dave doesn't know what an ATV is, and his mind created an ATV, which was a snowmobile.
That was the word association. And it just happened to pop up in conversation, and I just made myself look like more of an idiot. So, but ladies and gentlemen, Todd Hutchings, he'll be here for AWE 2, and we'll look forward to seeing you there and shaking your hand in person then.
I'm looking forward to it, boys.
Great, mate. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Bye-bye.
So, there we go.